Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Carolus. I'm with the Azure team here. Welcome to this session about asking the experts about how to kickstart your cloud migration journey with Azure Migration Program, or AMP for short. So we often see that cloud migration is the first step that customers take, and we have a great program for you to help you get started with that. It's called the Azure Migration Program. It's been around for about a year now. We've been evolving it. It has covered things like moving your VMs or databases up to Azure. And we've also recently added support for some exciting new scenarios, such as enabling Windows Virtual Desktop or moving your .NET applications. So we have a bunch of experts on the session with us today, and we are here to really answer your questions about the program and how you can engage with us. Just give me a moment. So in terms of how this is going to work, as I'm going to just take a few minutes to introduce some things about the program in case you're not familiar with it yet, but use the chat window to ask your questions. Feel free to look at those, that are asked by your colleagues and upvote them if you think that's a good question, and then we'll take those, and our experts are going to answer them for you. They'll get right on the video and answer that question. Just a reminder, this session is recorded. So just keep it nice and professional. I'll just flash the Microsoft Code of Conduct here, just as a reminder to everyone. Let me introduce our experts. So like I said, my name is Tony Carolus. I work on the AMP team. We have a number of people that work on AMP or with our products, that we are moving, helping you move up to Azure. So we've got Alexis, Ziva, Jonathan, and Frank. They deal with either aspects of the program or, some aspects of the services that we help you move. We've also got Anant, JT, John, and Pragya, who can answer, all these questions for you. So let me just frame, both inside of the program itself, as well as some other investments that Azure has been making to help you make your migrations more smooth. We've got the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, which is prescriptive guidance. And our program, in fact, follows that as, a standard approach to migration. We've got the Azure Migration Program itself, and we'll get into in a second what that contains. Another program that we have within Azure is Fast Track. So if you engage with the AMP program, you're in fact going to be engaging with our Fast Track engineers, as well as specialized partners to help you with that migration project. And then we also bring to bear a lot of tools that help you with that migration. So something like Azure Migrate to help discover and assess your environment and actually migrate VMs, or things that are going to help you after the migration is done, just for ongoing management or for enabling, say, hybrid scenarios. So capabilities like Azure Lighthouse and Azure Arc are also important, and things that we've been making a lot of investments in because we know that migration is so critical for everyone here. So let me just introduce what the Azure Migration Program contains. The first and most important thing is it's our, global and standard way that you can engage with Microsoft to get help with your migration project. So we follow, a prescriptive methodology, that being based on the Cloud Adoption Framework. And then once you engage with us, you're going to get help from experts. So it's going to be a combination of Fast Track engineers, so folks that sit right within Azure Engineering that can help you and guide you based on, the many, many engagements that we've had for migrating customers up to the cloud. And then we're also going to have specialized migration partners that help. And we're going to assign a partner that really knows that space. So if you are working on enabling Windows Virtual Desktop, we're going to, in fact, assign a partner that knows how to do that and has done it many times before. We're also going to help kickstart your project with some offers and incentives, and we can, get into what those might contain. And then another aspect is we're going to help your org get skilled up on Azure. We realize this may be your first time touching Azure, and we realize that getting everyone familiar with how to both migrate and as well as administer once things are in Azure is really important. So with that, I realize that some of you, this is maybe a new program to you, and that's fine. So, we're here to answer questions that start from just kind of the basics from, hey, what can AMP do for me? And what does an engagement look like? Or, if you have prior experience with AMP, feel free to ask those more detailed questions. That's fine too. So these are just some ideas, if you, are kind of just thinking about, what are you guys, here to talk to me about? This is it. It's all aspects of the program, partner qualifications. We can start to talk about, specific things like, hey, what should I do in terms of app modernization? Or what are we thinking next for AMP? In terms of new workloads we would support. So with that, I'm just going to leave this screen up just as a means to, kind of, get your thoughts flowing. But why don't you start typing questions in? Okay. So we've got our first question. How do you become a specialized partner in AMP? From Piet. So it's someone on our team. How about Anant? Would you like to take that question?
Sure. So there are two ways in which partners can kind of qualify for AMP. The first way is to be an Azure expert. So we have a program called Azure Expert MSPs. And I'll find a link for you guys to access it. The other option, and we found this option to be much more applicable for more niche technical depth for partners who have investments in, let's say, Windows skills, so SQL skills, or VDI skills, and so on and so forth, where we've got a relatively newish program called the Advanced Specialization, right? So this is where maybe there are smaller sized customers who need help on specific technology or capability areas, where we encourage partners to take the advanced specialization certification. So the Azure Expert program, it's a slightly more intense commitment to become a partner or become a qualified partner through that route. But advanced specialization is much more lighter weight and much more focused on a technology area. So those are the two paths to get qualified into the program.
Great. Thank you, Anant. I saw a question here. Is cloud to cloud also covered by the Azure Migration Program? By that, I assume you mean other clouds like AWS or Google. So Frank, are you with us? I think maybe that would be a good question for you to take.
Yes, we have a whole set of engagements where we have moved workloads from AWS as well as from the Google Cloud over to Azure. So that's definitely one topic that we cover with them.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see that on premises over to Azure is a real more common scenario, but we certainly support moving you from those other clouds. Let's see. I'm just scanning for more. If you're looking, Mitchell has asked if you're looking for a DR solution up to Azure, can AMP help us? I take that to mean you're going to keep the primary on premises, and would that be moving the secondary up to Azure? Is that is that acceptable? Ziva or Anant, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I would say the short way to think about it is you can, if you are trying to implement DR, right, you can actually use Azure as a DR location for your on-premises workloads, right? So you don't necessarily need to migrate. So in that scenario, if that's your requirement, then AMP may not be the best sort of mechanism to turn to. On the other hand, if you say, hey, look, I am planning to use Azure as my primary place to run my workloads, and then I'm going to use another Azure region as my DR location, then yes, AMP can help you make the move or help you move those on-premises, be it VMs or servers or databases or what have you, and then give you the counsel required to make sure that those workloads are set up with the right backup and DR infrastructure once they are running on Azure. But the primary goal of the Azure Migration Program is help you migrate your on-premises workloads to Azure. So that's how I would view that DR question, if that makes sense.
Great. And then, somebody just asked a few minutes ago, how do I do cost planning for my migration? I'll take the first crack at that one. Really what we see with the cost planning exercise is that it occurs both pre and post migration. The pre, it could be a theoretical exercise. You're doing things like you've got your inventory, and you would use tools like the Azure pricing calculator to help plan, okay, these workloads are going to move to these VMs, and it's largely a paper exercise, and you can do that by using our calculator and then creating, just basically a spreadsheet to help plan. But like anything that's on paper, when it becomes reality, that's different, right? So what we encourage you is after you're migrated, you should implement, tooling, and Azure has tooling to help you monitor what your actual costs have been. So we always encourage customers to keep that pulse on, what's the actual cost running like as compared to, what they planned for. And then the last point is, there's always the opportunity to optimize. So if you're, say, overrunning costs that were not, you didn't think it was going to be so much, there are levers in Azure that you can pull to, help you adjust that. So if you, want to say turn off VMs, during off hours, if you want to maybe downsize VMs, maybe things are not as utilized as you thought they were going to be. This ongoing optimization is, a real common practice. So we always encourage that. But the takeaway is that, cost is just kind of an ever-present thing. It happens, the planning happens before, and you want to keep tabs on it after migration.
Yeah, let me add a couple
and just to build.
Yeah, go for it, Ziva.
Yeah, go ahead, Ziva.
Just to build on your point, Tony, we have the cloud adoption framework that I would encourage all of you to leverage the content, because we have great guidance how to plan your project and also how to optimize and achieve the most of your investment in the cloud. So we definitely will put the link in the chat, so you will be able to leverage the content. It's free of charge and open for all of you to benefit from it.
Yeah, wonderful. And just to add on a couple more points, nowadays a lot of IT folks are getting in touch with us and saying, hey, how do I better work with my finance counterparts, right? Because as customers go from, CapEx spending to OpEx, right, there's just a real translation of how your organization might be reporting your financials, right? So there is impact to your profit and loss statement or cash flow statement. How does all of the mechanics around that work? Which is why we really, really encourage, even as part of CAF, like Ziva said, to loop in your finance stakeholders if you're part of the IT organization. We are seeing a lot more collaboration happen nowadays in today's challenging climate. The other point that Tony was making was on the planning phase, right? There are a couple of other interesting tools that you can use beyond what Tony said, right? Things like the Azure Hybrid Benefit. So if you're looking to move Windows and SQL, you can plan up how much savings could you have and project that in tools like Azure Migrate or even our TCO and pricing calculators. And then the second option that a lot of customers have been using is just multi-year reserved instances and capacity reservations upfront that you can also plan. So, but the point is that it applies throughout the migration journey and even after you've migrated, like Tony said.
Great. Because we have a couple of the folks on the call who have recently launched new things within AMP, I wanted to give them a chance to highlight those for you. A lot of times migration might just mean, moving what I have up to Azure, and you may think of it that way, but want to make sure that you know that it could be a lot more than that. So JT, did you want to just kind of give a quick primer on, what's new with the .NET support within AMP?
Yeah, absolutely. So just this past month, or I guess beginning of August, we launched a new offer in AMP with discrete payouts and support to migrate ASP.NET web apps into App Service and Azure SQL. So these are .NET web apps that may be sitting on a Windows server or a SQL server on premises or in a competitive cloud. We have fast track support and advanced specialized partners that have a specialization in web app modernization that can help bring those applications, excuse me, and the SQL servers that power them and lift them into app service and Azure SQL DB. The criteria for this, we tried to make it as flexible as possible and very similar to the data center migration offers. But if you have one app or a number of apps that sit on basically a minimum of 20 VMs, virtual machines on premises, then that meets the sort of threshold for support from us. And you can nominate that directly online, and we'll again bring an advanced specialized partner, fast track, and some support to bring those into app service and Azure SQL.
Great, thank you, JT. And Alexis, kind of in the same vein, I want to highlight for our audience what's new. So could you talk a little bit about Virtual Desktop or Windows WVD as we just launched in AMP?
Thank you, Tony. Yes, so Windows Virtual Desktop is one of the new workloads that we have launched into AMP this year. WVD has been a hot topic thanks to COVID, and it is top of mind for many of you who are needing to enable remote work for your users so that they can work from home during the time when your offices are closed. So Windows Virtual Desktop, great solution for you, and the AMP program can now help to provide you with that additional support and training, the engagement from Fast Track, etc., to help you migrate your desktops up into Azure. Now, importantly, I just posted this into the chat window, is when we're talking about WVD, there are 3 flavors of WVD. It can sit natively just on Azure, or it can sit on Citrix Cloud plus WVD, or on VMware's Horizon Cloud plus WVD. All 3 of those flavors are covered by the AMP program. So for those of you who have existing Citrix or VMware on-prem VDI deployments and you're looking for ways to migrate those up into their respective clouds, then the AMP program would be a suitable option for you. Thanks, Tony. Back to you.
Great. Thank you, Alexis. There's been a few questions about Azure Migrate. I think this is an important one to touch on. The name is just really similar to the Azure Migration Program. So in fact, I wanted to kind of demystify what Azure Migrate is and its role in the program. Pragya, could you kind of just in a few minutes walk our audience through just at a high level what Azure Migrate does and how we would use it in an AMP engagement?
Sure. So Azure Migrate is a free tool which comes with your Azure subscription. So if you already have Azure subscription, you can give it a try today. And it's a central hub for your end-to-end migration needs. So think about starting the discovery process when you are looking at your source environment and assessing your environment to make sure that you understand your migratable estate in great details. So the discovery process is taken care by the tool. Then we perform the assessment based on the results of the discovery and making sure that we understand the dependencies between the different servers. So let's say if you're planning to move an application, it's really critical to understand the dependencies across the different servers that the application is running on, right? So information around that. Assessment also gives you great insights around how ready your VMs are for migration, and you can get really good insights around your cost estimates, how much cost you will incur in terms of storage or compute when you're running your assets in Azure. So this gives you, a great idea about cost optimization, what options you have for right sizing your resources once it's in Azure. And then finally, you can perform a test migration and make sure that everything is healthy and there are no configuration issues. And once you're confident, you can perform the actual migration. So it's a great tool for the end-to-end discovery, assessment, and migration process. It's an all-in-one place. And we support scenarios SQL Server migration, Windows Server migration, Linux, .NET, VDI, and we are constantly adding more scenarios within Azure Migrate.
Yeah, thank you, Pragya. So in fact, it's a helper kind of tool that we would bring to bear in an AMP engagement, wouldn't you say that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so all of that, great IP is available to you, during an engagement, and our engineers and partners would help step you through that. So we got a question from Bill about Azure VMware solutions. I just wanted to highlight that if you are doing a data center migration and you decide to do it with us in AMP, then in fact we would help you move to AVS or Azure VMware Solutions. So Bill's question was just kind of a technical one. Just is AVS a physical on-premises device? Anand, do you want to take that? I know that you, from a prior life have experience with that.
Sure. The shortest way to think about it is no. AVS is, think of AVS as dedicated, specially built for VMware infrastructure, but hosted on Azure. So what we basically do is we would take a tool like Azure Migrate and connect it to your on-prem VMware vCenter servers, right? And then that's the way we would sort of suck out any assessment or discovery or inventory type information that's running on that VMware environment and get it over to AVS so it can run on Azure. Or we actually have a lot of customers who prefer to maintain and use their existing VMware tools. Like, for example, there's a tool called the VMware Hybrid Cloud Extension, which is what a lot of customers have been using. Because the primary reason where customers are coming to us for AVS is when they say, hey, look, I've got a lot of investment in VMware processes, skills, and 80% of my on-prem environment is virtualized on vSphere and vCenter as a management tool set, right? So we want to sort of bring that over to Azure for continuity reasons and get quick value, right? Even as we exit our on-premises data center. So that's kind of the reason behind us having that sort of dedicated solution like AVS on Azure. And in many cases, what I see is customers choose both options. Some, they say that, hey, look, I'm going to move a subset of my workloads to AVS because I want to maintain the VMware skill sets for those workloads. And then there are these others where I'm just going to use a tool like Azure Migrate and move them over to more native Azure IaaS, right? Where the tooling does all of the conversion that's needed to run on the Azure platform. So it's not like we have any we don't run any AVS type appliance on premises. It's more a dedicated set of hosts, if you will, that are purpose built to run your VMware infrastructure on Azure.
Great, thank you, Anand. We definitely see that that's a growing in popularity in terms of a path to get out of your data center. Johnny has asked a question that a lot of you have been upvoting. Is there an integration of Azure Lighthouse with Azure Migrate? So if you're working on multiple AMP projects, can you do things from one location? I don't know, I keep turning back to Anand, but do you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah. I mean, I'll touch on this lightly, given that this is not a in-depth management session. There are several other sessions on Lighthouse as well. So I'll make a broad statement. What we are seeing is that the ability to manage is become a bit of a day zero requirement, if you will, during and after the migration process, right? A lot of customers say, gosh, I need help during, and then when I land on Azure, I need to have a solid manageability infrastructure and tool sets, right? So I'm successful on Azure, right? So if you look at tools like Azure Lighthouse and Azure Arc, right? So think of them as helping with much more fine-grained, granular management, right? Whether with Azure Arc, you can imagine that it can manage your resources regardless of where they're running, right? On premises or on the edge or on Azure, right? With Lighthouse, a lot of our partners in particular, and some of our biggest customers, right, who have multiple sub companies or subsidiaries within them, they just want a way to have one interface that can help them manage it all with the precision and the control to go into each subtenant, if you will, right? So think of it as Lighthouse as being first coming from partners and then our largest enterprise customers. So I don't have specifics to share here, but we are actually looking closely at how we can tie together the Azure Migrate roadmap, where Azure Migrate, as Pragya and Tony described, as a tool to migrate, whereas Azure Arc and Azure Lighthouse are more management capabilities that allow you to scale across different environments or in the context of managing multiple customer subscriptions at a time. So we'll share more information and keep track of our public Azure roadmap, but just know that these type of considerations is what we're hearing from several other customers, and we're thinking deeply about how to get these tools closer.
Great, thank you, Anand. Somebody asked a question about training. You know, when I introduced kind of the tenets of the program, you know, training is one of the key things that we give you. So Ziva, could you kind of just talk about your experience with the various AMP engagements you've been involved with, and just how important, you know, customer training has been, and what kind of things we help you with?
So thank you. The training is definitely a significant piece that our customer really appreciate. It gives them the opportunity to upscale their technical people and basically remove objection of adopting the public cloud. We know that when we start a new project, our biggest challenge is to convince the user to adopt the new platform and really leverage that and maximize the outcome that it can benefit from. Providing skilling in the environment of the customer within the peers they're working with actually remove those objections and help us create much more traction around the public cloud platform and build trust. And this trust is the key factor to expand our cloud footprint and discussion to new engagement and new project that we can offer to those customers. The same apply for big enterprise customer and small niche customer as well. All of them are really appreciate the ability to consume from our training catalog and really upscale their people.
Great. Thank you, Ziva. Yeah, really highly prized and important part of the AMP program. You know, we're winding down to the last few minutes of this session. I would be remiss if I didn't just at least take a few minutes to tell you, how do you become involved with us? So Jonathan Downs, you know, could you just kind of walk our audience through, you know, and I realize we've got probably a mix of customers and partners on the session today with us. Can you walk them through, you know, how do they get involved with the program, and, you know, basically where to find us, how to stay in touch, that kind of thing?
So we lost JD.
I don't know if Jonathan's audio may be having some issues, and Ziva, since you're off mute, can you just answer what I was asking? You know, just how do you get involved with AMP?
So it's very simple and easy. AMP is basically a very structured program that encourages you to engage with us, just filling in a very simple form in our public site with some details about your project size, some details about the partner that you are engaging with. And from that point, our team will contact you and ensure to connect the dots. When we are talking about connecting the dots, basically it's a triangle of resource that we are putting together in order to we have the partner that deliver the project and ensure the progression of the cloud adoption. We have you with your technical resource, with your business stakeholders that influence the project. And we also have Microsoft resource that leaning in and providing the technical support, the skilling, and some funding to offset the migration cost. So once you are ticking the box that you are interested, our team will contact you and we'll take that from there to drive your journey to the cloud in the best and smooth way we can.
And all can be found under azure.com/amp.
That's correct, Mr. Frank.
That's right. So just head out to azure.com/amp. You know, it's got kind of the main points that I hit on at the top of this session, where, you know, we're highlighting what benefits are there for you. And then just kind of down lower, you know, there's a simple form to fill out. Just be mindful whether you're a customer or a partner. You know, but yeah, we're more than happy to engage with you, and we really look forward to getting your information about your project. So with that, we're at about time. So we really have appreciated hearing from you. These have been great questions. And we look forward to getting your sign up into AMP and helping you further your migration efforts. Have a good day and have a good Ignite.